Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to 2025, and this is Reanimated. My name is Stuart, and I'm one of your hosts. Coming at you from California and coming at us from New York is H.A. Conrad. Hello, welcome to 2025, H.A. How you doing?
Woohoo! I'm welcoming 2025 in with a good nap, which is kind of how I spent my New Year. But it was great. Just got back from London from an awesome trip. So that was fun, and happy to be here and chatting with you about Silo. But before we get to that, we have a few little tidbits. Which I don't think will come to us as a surprise to a lot of people, but I think it's always interesting to kind of hear from the creators how some of the sausage gets made,
Oh,
which,
God. Yeah, and
yeah,
this first one is
it
a
seems
file definitely under not surprising, especially given Netflix's recent track
right.
record. There's a headline in AV Club's newsletter and on their website this week. Clarita Diet creator learned his show was canceled when Netflix took apart his sets. Which, yeah, no surprise. And I'm on record as not being a huge fan of that show, so I don't it's not like I'm gonna cry a river for this one,
Right.
but it's still it's a bummer.
Yeah.
And it's just par for the course, I feel like, with Netflix. And it was kind of funny if you read the article that the creator of the show talks about having ended season three on a cliffhanger to make it harder for Netflix to cancel them. But I don't think Netflix has any qualms about canceling people on a cliffhanger or when son is on an airplane flying God knows where, and two other people are lying down on an airfield looking at you, Black
Yeah.
Summer.
Yeah. I mean, and it does make sense. And I mean, I think the only way that they're able to put that much financial backing is to be like, okay, is this thing going to have legs? And for the most part, a lot of it doesn't. And I think that there's a lot of reasons for that. There's just so much content out there that to really, and I do think people are looking for lightning to strike. Um, and so it doesn't always. And even if you're doing okay, they're not gonna like kind of continue that on because to them it's like, oh, it's just gonna be diminishing returns. On the flip side of that, if you have a show like The Walking Dead, and some of that is also timing, like that was a very different world that Walking Dead sort of entered into, and it was just kind of at like it was the time of Mad Men and these other things, and it was real. This isn't the same world that like Santa Clarita Diet debuted in.
Yeah,
So,
there's so much
um,
more content now than there
right,
was 15 years ago.
right. But I did think it was very interesting. There was a whole article, I highly recommend it. Just about it was in Collider, and basically, Robert Kirkman is talking about just how he ended up being so involved. He does give credit where credit's due, to Frank Darabont, and basically says like if he hadn't been there and hadn't read this and was like, okay, let's do this, he said it wouldn't have gotten made.
It's
But
also to like an unnamed employee of the comic book shop that Darabont walked into who handed him a copy of Walking
yep,
Dead.
yep.
But yeah,
Um,
Frank Darabont reading the comic and saying I could make this into a movie or a show is step one, and then step two is he raised enough interest at HBO and AMC to create this bidding war environment that gave Kirkman the leverage to insert himself into the process and get himself not only in the writer's room but as an executive producer, which you definitely don't see. I mean, the show we're talking about now, Hugh Howey, I think is a producer, but
yep.
he doesn't get writing credits on this show.
No, and I also think that this particular situation is such a rarity, but he is there was a few things I think that contributed to this. One is the bidding war, though he does gently say like they had promised Darabont certain things, but then they were also promising him things. And some of the leverage he had was he had such a rabid fan base and he had so much content and he knew how his audience had reacted to a lot of the different twists and turns of the comic book plot. So he already knew that stuff and was able to provide pretty valuable intelligence. And of course, they want to hit and they want to kind of want this thing to be successful. So it was to their benefit to have him involved. But it's kind of rare to see a creator like this as involved. I mean, we even saw with Game of Thrones, just how that worked out, although slightly different in that that was an unfinished work.
And
Um,
George Martin had TV. He has a resume with that
right.
involves TV, whereas Kirkman's coming at this completely out of out of the cold, as it were. Same with Hugh Howey, who is self-published, like even more. But yeah, so like it's a fascinating read. So get on Collider. I mean, it's just excerpts of an interview, but it's kind of a cool read into. And there's also some funny little parts of the interview where Kirkman's like, "There's a lot of behind the scenes that will go with me to my grave," or like, "I'll only talk about it in private," or some
Right.
stuff like
Well,
this.
it's got to be messy, and I'm sure there
Yeah,
was tug of wars about a lot of stuff. But I will say that maybe a lot of the things that we like about it are because he was involved. And this is interesting because it is like, yes, there's certainly things that do and don't work. And even and Game of Thrones is a good example of that, where such a large cast of characters in the books that you do have to sort of combine and winnow it down a little bit so that it is like easier to follow generally, and that the
yeah,
storylines are easier to kind of thread through all of the like twists and turns. But in this case, I mean, like especially like that first when there are some shots that are like shot for shot felt like they were right out of the comic book panel.
yeah.
Um,
And what's
and
kind of
so,
funny thinking about the Walking Dead show is so often when you're adapting a book or a comic book to a show is you're going to lose characters. They're going to be combined and reduced. And in fact, here we got like Daryl out of it, and we got a Beth. And I don't know,
yep,
I actually know Beth was in the books, but an expanded version of Carol. Like
yep.
there's so much more to the show than we got from the comics in a way.
Now we did get the Herschel's farm season. We know about that,
Yep, we sure got that.
but I would say just overall, the reason why I think that it has been successful is because they did understand, or at least involved somebody who understood the reactions of the fan base. And again, this is also not just the comic book fan base you're talking about; it's the newer fan base who maybe haven't followed the books. So you're having to like kind of like walk that line. But I thought this article was excellent, so I definitely recommend people checking it out. And last but not least, this is just a silly, weird thing that I saw with some like Pop-Tart mascots, and they brought like this strawberry zombie Pop-Tart. That was a little weird, and also weird that Bleeding Cool did an article about it, but that was basically the this is how thin the news was on this New Year's Day.
Yeah.
Just putting this out there. I was just like, it was like very strange.
But
Uh,
Bleeding Cool writing about some like sports mascot face off, actually, that does make sense. But if it was,
I
at least it's not like Fangoria or Bloody Disgusting writing about.
Yeah, it was just odd. But anyway, um, that's that's the roundup of news for this day. But as we're talking about different types of books created into series, I think that that does fit in nicely with Silo. And so I'm excited to talk about this episode with you. So I have some thoughts, but so
Yeah, this episode is called Descent, and it was directed by Amber Templemore and written by Jenny DeArmond Strand. Aired about 3 weeks ago ish in December 23rd last year, 2024. Um, and this episode, like as a lot of them have been, goes back and forth between Silo 17, where things seem to be going poorly, and Silo 18, where things seem to be also going quite poorly. I think we've reached the nadir parts of the storyline for the season. Now that we're in episode 5. Definitely, I feel like we need to get some upward trajectories going to get us feeling good again. Maybe, I don't know, maybe not.
Yep. I do think but there was a lot of interesting things that happened in this, and so I do think the next episode is probably gonna do that, make that turn, hopefully, and move things along a little bit more. But there was a lot that happened, a lot packed into this
There's a
episode,
ton
and
going on. It's not like it's a slow episode. Yeah, because if you recall what the events set into motion at the end of the last episode were the murder of Judge Meadows, the framing of Mechanical, Knox and Shirley, the race down the stairs, et cetera, et cetera. And
I gotta say, Tim Robbins freaks me out
oh,
in
he's
this
got
episode.
some really creepy looks going on. Yeah. And he's
And
using his
also,
height. He's using his height a lot.
There's another thing about this, so we should talk about this, is that when Tim Robbins is looking at you like that, maybe you should just shut up and not talk to him or say very little because
Yeah.
he looks insane.
Yeah.
I'm like, and a couple of the characters don't have much of a choice. I think Lucas probably does the best he can,
He does the best he can.
but
Also, just in that scene, there's no forced perspective here. Avi Nash is 5'9". He's an average
yeah,
height dude. Tim
but
Robbins
Tim,
is 6'5", and he's standing looming over him and
Mhm.
giving him the crazy eye. Like that's some straight up Dale eyeballs. So yeah, good job,
Good
Avi
job, Tim.
Nash. Avi Nash just looks so uncomfortable in those scenes, but I'm
Yep.
really glad that he's back on screen.
And and the other scene that I'm talking about is the one, well, there's several in this. Basically, Tim Robbins confronts everybody he possibly can in this, but like
He's
he's not taking
everywhere, isn't he? He's bouncing all
everywhere.
over.
He is all over the place in this. But he really like the scenes between him and Sims's wife Camille, and then the scenes between him and Juliet's dad. Juliet's dad, I think, just doesn't care anymore, so he's not even careful about what he says, but Sims and his wife are being very careful. But it's a lot. Tim Robbins is just shaking things up in here, and feels but also feels desperate. There's
Yeah,
something
there's
he's
stuff.
unraveled.
He's things are unraveling, and he is working as hard as he can to keep the silo from what he sees as like going into anarchy mode. But like some of the tools that they're using definitely feel like anarchy, but I guess it's like controlled anarchy is kind of the way I assume that he thinks of it. And some of that is this chase down the stairs. He's got judicial security, like ahead somehow. I guess using radio, they have walkie-talkies ahead of the mechanical four. I just call them the four because it's not all mechanical, but it's Walker, Knox, Shirley, and McLean, who is from Supply, and I don't know what levels she's from, but it's down pretty far. And they are not that far down. What, like 70-ish? No, not even, right? It was
Mhm.
hard to keep track of how far they'd made it. Um, and and they're like they're making rabble and rioters, and people are so pissed all the way down the line, basically, all the way down to basically 130, which is where that last barricade is, which I think is the demarcation point or between the down deep and everything else.
Mhm.
Um, so they're like working on getting down there. McLean has this idea. I guess her name is Carla. Is that right? She has this idea to use the porters to try and get
Yep.
down. Uh,
She's the head of supply
yeah,
and Walker's long lost love or estranged love.
or like never quite. You know, I don't think they ever actually made that connection, but they were. But maybe they did. I don't know. That was my headcanon is that they they were really into each other, and then Walker became agoraphobic and like disappeared. But yeah, they're a cute couple, like in that way. But yeah, they have this idea to go talk to the porters. And that's like then we have there's a cut to Sims and his wife Camille, Robert and Camille having this conversation in their house, and they're talking strategy in the way that they do, in the way that husbands and wives will like talk about their jobs and work. And he's like, "Oh, he definitely knew it was me who did the impeachment." And then they hear their son be like, "There's a man in
Oh
the
man,
kitchen."
they never want to hear that. That's never a good
That
sign.
is never what you want to hear, and you don't want it to be a 6'5" mayor
Tim Robbins, definitely
hitting your
not.
coffee maker. It's a very fraught scene, but then it ends in a kind of an unexpected way. But also, I think Bernard's kind of in a corner with Sims. He can't have him killed necessarily. I mean, maybe he can, but he's like, "You're too valuable. You've violated my trust by going behind my back and doing this impeachment malarkey. So you're no longer head of judicial security. Instead, you're gonna be the new mayor. So go get your pact and let's swear you in." And it's
Right. And there's a moment where it's like they look at each other and there's nothing they can do. and they're being outmaneuvered or they don't know quite what the maneuver
I mean,
is,
it's a
and then
promotion. Like, it's not.
it is, but there's something else happening, and then Camille is, as I said, their responses, they are going to give him as little information as possible, and Camille is like, I'm towing the packed line. I'm just going to say I'm
Yep.
not involved in security anymore. I'm just a mom,
Yeah.
and that's because that's what the pact wants. And she really just like, and you believe it, like at least, I mean, I don't think he fully does, but at least she's saying what she's like being very cautious here so that she can go out and stir up stuff in another way.
Yeah.
Um,
But she
but
she definitely gets some stuff stirred up in this episode in a way that
mhm,
actually gets back to him, which I don't know that she
gonna be bad.
thought that through. I don't know. That could go very badly for her. But like when you think that he was recruiting Meadows to be his shadow, this is still not bad for Sims. He could still end up with the job that he wants, and he's a step above where he was. Maybe he'll get Meadows' nice apartment, where he dealt with her body. He's definitely like when he goes into her office, he's just standing around looking around at stuff for a while, ignoring his secretary and freaking her out. And I'm just like, what? He's just thinking about how he put the body of Judge Meadows in that chair a few hours ago, maybe. I'm not sure.
Well, there's that, and there's also he is now cut off, as he finds out, from
Yeah.
the information that he had been privy to before. And his role has been he is somebody else has stepped into it. He is feeling stress about that because now he's cut off and he only is provided information, and that is probably the part of the reason why Bernard puts him in this spot because nope, you're now my puppet is kind of what he's saying. And so it's going to be interesting to see what happens. And, you know, Camille, on the other hand, is out there kind of like getting into stuff because she, I guess, doesn't want the new head of security to be successful. And she's also, I don't know, she doesn't want things to go the way they are because maybe this is part of what Bernard's overall plan is because it does feel like Sims is being set up because he's very upset about Meadows' murder. He basically is like, "You made me do something I didn't want to do," and we all know, based on what we saw, how he felt about Meadows. So there's definitely more to come on that.
But like it speaks to Bernard's convictions that he was able to just murder the lady that he might have been romantically
True.
interested in too. So yeah, Camille, let's just talk through her storyline. I mean, sometimes that's how the easiest way to do this because otherwise you
Yep.
bounce around all over the plot place the way this show kind of does. But she keeps saying to her husband like this would be going better if Amundsen wasn't in charge. I think that he's good, but he's not you. And if you were running things, we already have these people in custody, or the crowd would have captured them by now, and it would be all over. And but so to make Amundsen look bad, I assume, and to thwart Bernard in some fashion, she intercedes on the when Knox and Shirley, who have after some like machinations, have gotten captured and or are being confronted by a mob and some undercover judicial security. She intercedes and says, "You know who my husband is, and you better let these guys go right now. And I'm going to arrest them. I'm going to take them away." And she kind of just is able to walk away with them, but
Yeah.
then
I
lets
mean,
them go in an alley with no cameras.
right. And I think part of this is that she knows, like Bernard is now trying to manipulate this. He's the one who set up the whole frame job, and he really does want Knox and Shirley either to be like lynched is kind of like what we're seeing,
Yeah.
because he wants his mob to go crazy, and then he gets to like pin all of this on them. And so she's deliberately stepping in the way. I honestly was a little surprised that it got back to him so quickly, but that's just how it works in the silo.
Well,
Um,
she did it right in front of two people who work
yeah.
for judicial, so it was going
Yep.
to like that, and she wasn't wearing a helmet or anything. She wasn't,
Right.
she
Right.
identified herself. She was very clear about who she was, which is how she got it to work. So it does feel like a short-term plan, that I am curious how they're going to resolve that and in a way that doesn't end up with her in a worse position than she's in. There's also some interesting, like we get introduced to Asa the plumber, who has
Hmm.
some words of warning for Knox and Shirley, like don't trust her. The only reason I do what she says is because I'm afraid of her. Um,
You should be too.
yeah,
Yep.
and yeah,
And then they are also, they don't know why she's helping, so they're suspicious of that, which I don't blame them. And then she's all, Camille basically is like, "All right, I'm doing this." She gives them all the sort of like playbook about what they're supposed to do, and then she goes back. She doesn't tell Sims what she's
she
done, and
doesn't tell her husband. Yeah, that was interesting.
yep. But Bernard now knows, and so that's going to probably come back. And
That'll be an interesting conversation between the two of Robert and Camille later. Yeah.
right. And the thing is that Knox and Shirley don't do what she wants them to do. They go up and they, as they had been trying to go down the silo, one of the head of the porters was supposed to help them and betray them because it was just too much bounty on their head. But they go back and they get this winch to be able to get down into the lower levels. And so they're also kind of going by their own playbook because they don't trust
She
anybody.
didn't really give them a playbook. She told them there was the barricade was on 130. She's like, I don't know how you're going to get around it, and I don't care. So
Right. But
in a way,
there's
she wasn't giving them a way to do it, but she also was giving them the information. So
but they like I don't know. I think that they did um did some surprising things
I think
though.
she was just trying to shelf them for a while to give Sims time to maneuver or something like she was trying to buy time, which she has done, but also now things
Right.
have escalated. So
Well, and I also think that she is not, she wants to make Amundsen look bad.
yeah,
So there's also
that
that.
has succeeded. Amundsen does look bad, but
Yep.
she looks culpable. The winch scene was pretty freaking cool. I like the way that they like dressed up as porters also.
Yep. That was,
I like that they keep yeah. Knox is a big guy, and they keep kind of nodding to that. They're like they were gonna put him in a sack of grain. They're like, that's never gonna work. And then they were like, is this winch thing even gonna hold you? They would have both broken their backs, I want to say, when
oh
that thing
yeah,
stopped.
definitely.
I mean, he gets badly injured when the cable snaps, I think. He has a big cut on his back and he barely escapes
Yeah,
death when
the
Amundsen drops the winch mechanism over the side, but they make it down to basically to friendly territory. But so does then the mob knows that they're down there and breaks through the barricade, and now there's a angry mob coming down to wherever the hell they are. And this is kind of by the order, right? Or the in that book that Tim Robbins that Bernard has been referring to. You cast you put everybody else in the silo against mechanical, and that's how you put down the rebellion. That's what happens when somebody doesn't clean. So this is so far in a way it's going according to plan, but I think it's not as neat and tidy as he would have wanted it to go.
oh yeah. And then we also have other factors. We've got Billings also gathering different facts and in some ways because he's removed from and he's a little bit nervous now too, because Sims is now in judicial, but he's down there piecing together the mystery down to mechanical too. And it's kind of interesting how the pacing of this and how they're revealing different information, because different characters have different pieces of information. Like Bernard, just based upon what Bernard is like, oh yeah, Billings, Sheriff Billings, you're gonna, help me out and you're gonna have to like take care of this stuff. And Billings is like, oh yeah, sure. No problem. But he's
That's
in the
yeah.
meantime,
Now that he's got Patrick Kennedy in custody and like Billings is clearly has flipped. Like
yep,
it's funny. Him and Hank have this conversation, and a lot of their scenes are just to like show us that they are becoming simpatico, that they are like sharing dangerous secrets with each other. Hank is like, I'm really conflicted that Shirley and Knox are being chased and are being accused of murder because I'm basically their friend, and I don't think that's something that they would do. And Billings shoots back like, "Yeah, I'm the sheriff, and I've got a syndrome that's against the pact." He's been telling everybody that. I feel like he tells somebody
Yeah,
that every
he's
other
telling
episode.
a lot of people about it. And he also says, like, he shares that he's really nervous because Sims gave him a pass on it, but
Yeah.
now no, is now in judicial. So he's like, what's going to happen to me now?
Hmm.
And again, all the other stuff that he's piecing together with Hank, he does not seem inclined to be, supporting IT. In fact, he seems pretty scared about it. And so
Well,
that's kind of
yeah, I think he's not obviously he's not gonna support he's not gonna chase down these guys at all.
right.
I don't think the sheriff's presence in that part of mechanical, first of all, they are sympathetic to those people. And second of all, there's only like four or five of them. What are they gonna do? You know?
But there's also a theme of this episode, which is who has what information and lots of secret information that people are a little bit scared to find out. So
Yeah.
we also have him and Hank finally finding Patrick Kennedy, who is wounded. He's not dead. And
Crazy.
he says a lot of things like um and I'm assuming that maybe the doctor ends up down there to help. I don't know. Juliet's dad, Dr. Nichols. But basically, he says, "I'm going to share everything." He does, no, but there's like a lot of lack of trust because of this information and the narratives that are being spun. But Patrick Kennedy is just like, yeah, there's things I'm going to share with you that you don't want to know. And he eventually does trust Billings because Billings reveals, I thought he was going to reveal more, but he shows him what he found, in Juliet's, like the piece of the book or something and
It's
says, look,
again like sharing all these dangerous
yeah,
secrets, you know?
and trusting that Patrick Kennedy isn't gonna like out him. Like there's a lot of weirdness going on in terms of sharing this information. But Kennedy's like, all right, get me a doctor, but you're not gonna like the stuff that I'm gonna tell you. And then you've got Bernard, who definitely smashed that hard drive because of how dangerous he thought the information was on there. But after some of what Meadows revealed, that's part of why I think he has Lucas trying to reconstruct it and
Yeah.
even says, and this is like a pretty dark thing, and one of his like this scene between them is so dark, but
Yeah.
basically says, I have other people more qualified to do this, but I know you're going to do it because you want to live, because otherwise he's going to send him to the mines. And poor Lucas doesn't really get much of a buy. He gets like, he does like such a great job and reconstructs all this stuff, and
In like
then
hours,
yeah, and then
he's
he's like,
come up with
I
yeah.
guess you got another 24 hours of freedom or
Oh my
whatever
God,
it
not
is.
even freedom. You have 24 hours to live working on this as hard as you can, and then I'll see if you get another patch of time.
Mhm.
Because he's found already is this schematic that
Right.
shows things coming into the silo on the judicial and the IT level, which I think we can deduce are power couplings or
Power, but
communication.
also the tunnel. He shows the
In the
tunnel.
tunnel down at the very bottom, which
Yep.
might come into play later. Who knows? Um, and then he, at the very end, as Bernard's leaving, he's like, "Oh, also there was this weird letter from Salvador Quinn," and that's where Bernard's interest is definitely peaked, and he might have bought himself more than 24 hours at that point, I
Right.
think.
And then as far as other, secrets and information, we've got Juliet, still kind of trying to figure things out, problem solve in the other silo with Solo. And things are not, Solo is showing how much he is unraveling. She also discovers, there's interactions between them where he reveals more and more, but not quite everything. And she knows there's something else there, and ultimately discovers he's not who he says he is, and that he's like taking on this identity. She finds this by, some of the things she's finding in the silo with, lists of different employees with their photos and their nicknames.
Well, yeah, because she's looking for helmet and suit parts, and she finds a list of employees, and she finds a memo about a missing helmet, and then she goes to like the employees' apartments, and then in the employee apartment finds a framed photo or a framed portrait because they don't have cameras, they have painters, right?
Mhm.
That says Solo and then their sister and their sister Tiny, I think. And Solo does not look anything like Steve Zahn.
Oh,
And so she confronts him about it, and he goes ape bananas upon her.
yep,
And she gets very scared. She's also exhibiting a lot of symptoms of
yep,
like pretty bad infection.
yep.
She's feeling faint. She's sweaty. she's favoring her left arm where she had that zombie bite looking thing, which pretty sure it's not a zombie bite, but hey, who knows? Maybe the show's going to be a zombie show after all, HA.
It may, but the other part of this is that we also have interactions with Solo where, we see how much he's untethered, how much his level of immaturity, like he knows certain things, but he doesn't know, like he's revealing sort of his lack of knowledge of certain things, but he knows enough that, Juliet's talking about the flooding and asking why there's power, and this slots into some of the information we find out later, but basically Solo says, "Oh, there's separate power source for IT."
Coming from
And
outside.
not from mechanical. And she's like, from where? He's like, outside. And um, but then he also knows how long he has because he knows that like he's going to be underwater because the water keep rising, and he says exactly how it happened, that it was done to kind of tamp down a rebellion in mechanical. It didn't work out so well because they didn't have time to fix it, and that's why the water keeps rising. And then he's like, he knows what she's doing, but he's like, no, you have to help me do this. And he starts to become more and more like angry and emotional. He does not like whatever version of reality he's built around himself, possibly as a defense mechanism. He doesn't like it challenged. I'll admit to you, when she was first exhibiting symptoms, I thought maybe he had like done something with her food or whatever, but it turns out it was the infection.
Hmm.
And so she's just kind of placating him. But
I mean,
we will have to see.
after the screaming, and then he chills and
Yeah.
he's like, "You really should eat something." She's like, "I'm not hungry. I don't feel well." She runs away from him, goes and finds the helmet under a bed, a bit of an odd way. And then she's like, "I've got my helmet. I'm gonna go," and passes out. And that's the end of that. Hopefully he's got some antibiotics because I feel like that's the only thing that's gonna save her at this point. Maybe some mold that's growing on the walls of the silo. Who knows, right? He's got to have
Yeah,
antibiotics in his bunker, though, don't you think?
yeah, I think
Or
so.
maybe there'll be some in medical, but medical's probably underwater
Maybe,
because they're flooded
maybe,
to
but right.
2022.
Right. And what he knows or doesn't know, because it seems more and more like he was a little kid and has been in there. Like maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. I don't know. It's so I think obviously we know that Juliet makes it through. At least she's the main character. So I think there will be some kind of like I think he'll come through and has something. Also, IT does have a bunch of stores. It would probably be make sense that there's some antibiotics or
Yeah,
something
they've got
there.
redundancies. I mean, if they've got food in there, they've got
Yeah.
power. I'm sure they've got some kind of medical.
But whether he knows exactly how to use it, I don't know.
True.
So
He's like, yeah, like you pointed out, his knowledge is like extremely detailed in some ways, where he's just like, oh yeah, the suit offices were on this level and this level, and that one's underwater and that one's underwater. Yeah, but then he doesn't know exactly where the power comes from outside.
yeah.
It's interesting the way that they're presenting his character. That's kind of everything that happens in Silo 17, though. Is that right? He really wants her to help him fix the pump, but it's on level 30, and we can remember that that's at least 7 levels underwater. I think at least
Yep.
7.
Yeah,
But
yeah. There's
yeah,
a lot.
that's a long way down,
Um,
considering each of these levels is like what, 20 feet. And but now they have a helmet, so maybe she could make a little diving suit, but she's not interested in doing that. She wants to get back to 18 to
yeah.
stop the uprising if she can.
Yep.
Um, and there was also a really, really good scene between Ian Glenn and Tim Robbins. Ian Glenn playing Dr. Nichols, her dad, when he is summoned. He's like helping out people who were injured in the riots, and then he is summoned by a judicial raider to go to the mayor's office, and he is given Juliet's
Belong.
badge, her Leatherman, and her watch. And Bernard is like, I don't want these things to be put back into circulation because they could be venerated as like holy relics or something. And I know that you, as a good, upstanding doctor helping the people of the silo, don't want anything bad to happen to the silo.
Yep.
And then Dr. Nichols reads him the riot act and just tells him all the ways that the silo has let him down. And I thought and I just loved this read from Ian Glenn. I thought it was such a good scene. I assume you enjoyed it too.
I did, and this is like a part where we already saw that, um, that he was feeling like he is already rebelling because he did take and he talks about this, but he took the birth control um
Yeah.
out of the woman that he had been talking to. And he specifically talks about that with Tim Robbins. He's like, I'm tired of acting against what you took away even the honor of my profession where I was actually helping people and all these people who have hope, but they're code orange, so they can't actually have kids, but they think that they're being given that chance. And he's sort of like, you've taken everything from me, or the silo has taken everything from him, his wife, his son, his daughter, and even the pride of his profession. And he obviously does not care, even though honestly, again, Tim Robbins, this look
Oh,
is
dude, that's
oh,
just another hot look.
no, no. And it's like, but I don't think he even cares. Jorah Mormont does not care at all anymore.
Well,
Uh,
he says as much. He's like, what else do I have to lose? There's literally nothing
right,
left.
right.
So I don't know what I mean, honestly, I feel like Tim Robbins. I feel like Bernard has no choice but to put him in the mines or
Right.
to get him out of circulation too, just like the relics. But I'm not sure what's going to happen after that conversation. It doesn't seem like it's going to go well.
Nope. But anyway, he doesn't, but he feels like he needs to say it. And he's just kind of like, you know what? I'm just going to tell you what I think. And the biggest thing that he definitely does like a mic drop here. And he's basically like, you can't control how Juliet is venerated. You can't control how I feel about her or how the people feel about her. And he's like, I'm out. Peace out.
Peace out.
And he's out.
And you know what?
So
Bernard has no time to deal with any of that either because, like we said at the beginning of this, he is all over the silo. He's going down to that like janitorial closet surveillance room constantly. He's talking to people. He's talking to Billings. Like, you got to get those guys who are coming down. Like, even though Dr. Nichols just did something that was a death sentence yesterday, I don't think that he has time to even manage it right now. So maybe he'll get a pass until things cool down, if they cool down. It's a wild episode. There is a lot packed in here. But did you have a sense that you didn't enjoy it as much as some of the other ones?
Oh no, no, no. I totally did. I just was scared for him. And
Scared
there
for
was a lot.
Bernard? Like poor Bernard?
No, I felt like there's a lot going on in this whole episode that and again, I think this is part of why this is so successful. I think all of this is going to be knit into the story in a really good way. This is the buildup, which is why I think there's going to just be a lot more action going forward. But I do like watching, I mean, Bernard is everywhere, as you said, all at once in this episode,
Yeah.
and watching his different interactions, how he's still trying to control and manipulate. And for the most part, honestly, he's not like he can't control Camille, he can't control Dr. Nichols. He can't even really control what's happening in terms of the sentiment. He knows the sort of underpinnings of different things. I mean, I think the only person that he sort of manages to control well in this is Lucas because he's got him under his like
Yeah.
thumb,
And he kind of has everything from level 1 to 129
locked down.
kind of
Yeah.
under his control. So in a way, he's still batting pretty good for the silo, but I think he knows that it's just like, the wind changes and they're all screwed. I kind of, I definitely feel for him because he has seen what's happened when this goes badly. He is trying to like save everybody, but he's doing it in a way that's authoritarian, draconian, and terrible. But that's that, yeah, and that's crappy. I guess I'm not trying to say that I'm a judicial or IT stan. I definitely want the goodies to win, but if they do, we can see like one outcome is really bad for the whole silo. So that's yeah, it's tough. It's a sticky wicket.
It is. So anyway, lots that is going to happen, I think, in the next episode. And once again, you will be proud of my willpower. I did not move forward, even though I really wanted
It's
to.
really challenging,
Um,
isn't it?
it
Yeah.
is challenging. And so I am curious to see what happens. In the next round. One thing we didn't really talk about quite as much was Walker just kind of getting by under the radar.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's kind of laughable that she is able to just
yeah,
kind of sneak through a literal mass riot fight And she's kind of tiptoes around all these people fighting on the stairs while McLean has been arrested, and she's just kind of been hanging out on the stairs waiting for the barricade to fall down. We've also had a few scenes now with I don't remember this character's name, but she was like the secretary in the sheriff's office when Juliet got hired as sheriff or appointed sheriff, and she was kind of hostile to Juliet at first, and then she was like, "I'm going back down. I quit the sheriff's office or whatever." You remember her? And she's had a few scenes now. Like she was part of this two-person entourage who escorted the mechanical people up, and then she had a scene arguing with a judicial raider that she lives on 132 and she wanted to go home and they weren't letting her through the barricade. I forget her name, but it's kind of interesting that they've brought her back as, I guess,
Yeah.
just another sympathetic character in the silo. I don't know.
Yeah,
Interesting.
we'll see. We'll see what happens there. I don't know, but yeah, she's now popped up a few times, so I feel like maybe she's going to be, maybe there'll be a little bit more, or she's maybe just creating, maybe it's so that you're seeing sort of the same characters, at least, that it's not just this sort of like faceless something or other, but
Yeah.
yeah, but we shall see.
But fascinating stuff. We also had another scene with Billing's wife, where she's like got her baby in a sling and she's setting dislocated shoulders, and she briefly connects with Dr. Nichols and impresses him with her medicinal skills while holding a baby. So I'm also glad that they didn't just introduce her character and then lock her away in her apartment. She's out there, she's doing stuff. She'll probably come back and be important in some way.
Yep. Yep. So we shall see.
Yeah.
So that was definitely a fun episode, lots packed in. So I'm really excited to watch the next. This has been like a fun series. I'm not really feeling like I'm really enjoying how they're playing out the storylines and taking the time to just build in some of this intrigue and all. It's a lot of information. So very excited to do that. One last thing that I did really enjoy was also Juliet's exploration of like the sort of abandoned living quarters. I thought that was kind of cool. And then one little drop of information that we didn't talk about was the Romeo and Juliet play and the different ending, like because Solo knows that they die and she does not. She's like, they don't die. So that was also
That
kind
was
of
just
interesting.
such a little throwaway piece too, because she's
Yep.
also most of the time when he's talking to her, she's distracted and trying to do something else, and he's like, "They didn't die," or no, she's saying they didn't die in her play, and he's like, "Yeah, yeah, they
Yep.
did. What's in a name?" Anyway,
Yep.
very
Anyways,
very good stuff. Steve Zahn continues to be stellar.
yep, he does. And their interactions are really good. So definitely excited to continue to watch the rest of this. So, all right. So I think that's it for this New Year's Day podcast.
Yeah, so join us again next time on Reanimated, and we will be talking about episode 7 of season 2 of Silo. You can reach us if you want to let us know what you think of it at reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. Our episodes are all online at reanimated.podbean.com. And I bid you adieu.
Adieu and Happy New Year. Thanks for listening.